Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Carsey Policy Hour. I'm your host, Melinda Negron-Gonzalez. If you're new to the Carsey Policy Hour, each month we gather to unpack a pressing policy issue shaping communities in New Hampshire and beyond. Today, our topic is food, a topic near and dear to our hearts because, well, we need food to survive. So the title of today's talk is An Actionable Roadmap Toward Positive Change, how the New Hampshire Food and Agriculture Strategic Plan is changing New Hampshire's food and agriculture system is easy to overlook precisely because it's mostly made up of small operations. And we don't always think of it as a system, more like a collection of farms, fisheries, and food businesses quietly doing their thing. But taken together, it's a major economic and community pillar, nearly 4,000 farms supporting over 20,000 jobs and generating more than $1 billion in economic activity. At the same time, most of those farms are operating on very thin margins and facing some very big challenges. And that tension is what today's conversation is about. The New Hampshire Food and Agriculture Strategic Plan is an actionable roadmap for New Hampshire. The plan looks across products, markets, and policy challenges, all through the consistent lenses of farm viability and equity. And we're very lucky this morning to be joined by Colleen Jennings, the network coordinator for the New Hampshire Food Alliance, which is a statewide network that's coordinated by the University of New Hampshire. So Colleen is going to walk us through how this strategy becomes action and what this means for organizations and communities across the state. But before we dive into today's discussion, I'd like to remind you that the Carsey School of Public Policy is independent and nonpartisan. The school is nationally recognized for rigorous and actionable research. We house 4 research centers at the Carsey School, and we also offer 4 Dynamite Professional Master's programs, offered both online and in person. I'd like to take a moment to thank our series partners for the Carsey Policy Hour. Our partners are the New Hampshire Municipal Association, New Hampshire's Bureau of Education and Training, the New England Sustainability Network, and the New Hampshire Association of Counties. At the Carsey Policy Hour, our aim is not only to inform, but also to prompt meaningful discussion. So we do encourage you to post questions and comments in the chat. And following the discussion, we'll open the floor to questions, and feel free to submit your comments and questions during the discussion while Colleen is presenting. And you'll find the chat button on the center left of your team screen. The chat is open, it's visible to everyone, so we do ask that your comments remain respectful and constructive. And please also identify yourself when you pose a question to or offer a remark. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Colleen, who is going to give us all kinds of information about New Hampshire's food system. Thank you, Colleen.
Thank you so much, Melinda. That was a wonderful introduction. I should have just give this over to you. You did such a great job summarizing our work. But I'm going to dive us a little deeper. I'm going to share my screen. So as Melinda said, we're here to talk about our food system, but also the work that our organization, the New Hampshire Food Alliance, and as you'll hear about many, many other organizations, have come together to do is produce the first ever strategic plan for New Hampshire's food system. So that's what we're going to run through today, and kind of where we're at in sort of implementing this plan, but also kind of how we got to where we are. Just a little bit of grounding before we jump into that. Linda did a great job of explaining what the Food Alliance is, but I want to kind of give you some more context of who we are. So we are a network of people, businesses, organizations, and communities working together to build a stronger local food system in the Granite State. So what that means in plain language is our small organization, we're housed at UNH in the College of Life Sciences and Agriculture. And we're just a team of 3, but our work is made stronger by all of the organizations and businesses and people, communities, as I said, that are working on food systems issues across New Hampshire and New England. So you see on this slide, there's a handful of our partners there with their logos. And what's more indicative is all those little dots in that screenshot there of our partner map. That's over 300 organizations and businesses that we have worked with through a variety of our work over the past 10 years of the Food Alliance's existence, to work on various food systems issues and get a lot done. And the primary reason we operate in this way as a network rather than your maybe more typical nonprofit that's kind of working in its own silo and kind of in its own lane is that our organization is small. Many of the organizations that you see on the slide are very small. And we believe that together we can do more. We can achieve more if we collaborate, know what each other is doing, and really are consistent about our commitment to working together. We can achieve so much more and bring our food system to a more viable space. So that's kind of, that is, I want you all to remember that as I'm going through a lot of kind of maybe information you haven't heard before. That's our core value is collaboration, coordination, and really prioritizing working together. So just a little bit, kind of one bite of New Hampshire's food system. I could talk about many different angles and how to analyze our food system and how viable it is, or how, where we're struggling and where we're facing challenges. But this overview kind of gives everybody a really good idea of when I say New Hampshire's food system, this is what we're talking about, and this is kind of our baseline. This is what we're working with. Currently, New Hampshire, as Melinda said, has about 4,000 farms. Many of those farms, well over 80%, are run by families or individuals. They're not big corporation farms. They're family farms. And of those farms, they really, 80% of them really only gross about less than $25,000 per year. So that, again, is something that we think about in terms of viability, in terms of people's livelihoods. That statistic is often means that another family member or partner has to be working off the farm in order to create a viable economic situation for a family who is farming in New Hampshire. And our farms in New Hampshire are really small just in terms of actual size. And when I think a lot of people sometimes when they think of farms, they think these vast tracts of land and, for as far as the eye can see, New Hampshire's farms, many of them are operating on just a few acres, not, 99 acres or less. 99 sounds like a high number, but it really is not in terms of agriculture. But the positive, as Melinda said, our farms are not producing economic value. They're supporting jobs. They're supporting sales through direct product sales and through labor and employment and agritourism, which has been a really big growth factor in New Hampshire's food system over the past 10 or so years. So this is kind of, again, a baseline of where we're at. And for us, this is our grounding factor in any of our work that we do, but specifically in our strategic planning work. We needed to understand where our farmers were at, where our fishermen were at in terms of viability in order for us to create a strategic plan that will really be impactful. The next two slides I have here kind of reiterating what I just went over, but it kind of gives us a little bit more detail. So a lot of these charts are from the strategic plan we were part, and we'll get into this a little bit, but one of the key factors of creating a strategic plan that is holistic and provides a good view of what we're talking about in our food system is data. As we all know, data, we love it. But this is a good idea. It gives you kind of a snapshot of what is being produced in New Hampshire, what agricultural products and fisheries products are being produced here in New Hampshire. So this is kind of an interesting breakdown. The next slide is kind of flipped on the other side of viewing that through sales. And I talked about that a little bit with how much farms are grossing, but you'll see that there are farms that are, grossing upwards of 250,000, 500,000, but there's the very small amount. The majority, as you see, are grossing less than 10% of sales per year. So, and to us, that doesn't spell terror. It doesn't spell anything bad. It's just, this is how our farms are operating. There are many farmers in that less than 10K column that are extremely happy with the way that their business is running because they are operating their business and their lifestyle in a way that works for them. They farm part of the year, they work other jobs, their partner works a different off farm. So it's really thinking about not just the numbers, but also the lifestyle that's behind them. Okay, so all of that grounding, I guess, as I said, is really what has kind of built the foundation for us as the New Hampshire Food Alliance, our network, and the New Hampshire Department of Agriculture, Markets, and Food, who was our partner in producing the strategic plan, or one of them, but our main partner primarily. All of that data and all of that understanding of where we are at with our food systems work and where our farmers are at and fishermen, we were able to take that and build on it to create the strategic plan, which we affectionately call an actionable roadmap towards positive change. But primarily, our goal was to go back to those core values of collaboration, coordination, and really put the pen to paper with that and say, okay, what are we doing in these areas? How can we work together? How can we be more strategic? And I know that word scares people and can be kind of boring, but it really, for us, our food system is so vast, it covers so many different topics and areas and issues that the only way for us to move things forward in a way that is sensical and is impactful is to really have a plan that lays it out and is iterative and thoughtful in how we can use the levers of change, passing policies, investing in infrastructure, building more networks, and developing programs to really foster viability in our food system. So that is what we did. We set out to do a strategic plan, and we're hoping it's been successful so far. We're kind of working on the implementation, which I'll get to in a little bit. But so the next couple slides I'm going to go through are kind of to give you an idea of what's inside the strategic plan. It's well over 100 pages. It's quite long. It's a little bit of a big document, but when I break it down, I hope that it will be clear what the intention was behind it. So this is by the numbers. Those bottom row numbers are really, I really want to share those to show they really don't have anything to do with the content, but they do have everything to do with how we created the strategic plan. We could have definitely sat down with a room full of 25 experts in food and ag, with Department of Ag and Extension and all that. We could have just sat everyone down and said, all right, let's write a plan and be done with it. But we knew, because of, again, our core values of collaboration, coordination, we wanted to make sure that this plan worked for everyone in New Hampshire, for everyone working in the food system. So we set out to not only produce content that was relevant and useful, but also make sure that people had the opportunity to, at every point, to respond and provide feedback on that content. So those bottom numbers are really showing we, took advice from our advisory committee. We, opened every brief to a public comment for people to share what their thoughts about what was being included in the strategic plan. So that's really important to us. It may sound it doesn't play into you won't see that live in the strategic plan when you open it up, but it's really at the core of it. That top row of numbers that's the content. That's where the meat of it is. So as I said, we collected as many people as we could, as many experts, which we call them subject matter experts, but they're really people. They're New Hampshire people who live here and work here and are experts in their field who came together. We brought them together to work on these 27 product markets and issue briefs, and I'll get into what those are in a little bit. So we had those subject matter experts write those briefs, and at the end of each brief, there's 5 to 10, depending on the brief, recommendations being made by those experts of how to move that product market issue forward. And so at the end of it all, we have 143 very specific recommendations that were made by these experts to move forward these issues. So that's kind of really the overall summary of what's inside the strategic plan. So these are all our brief topics, and I know it's a lot to look at, but the important thing I want to make known is that every single one of these 27 product markets or issues, they were considered, the brief authors and subject matter experts were asked to consider their issue or product or market through the lens of equity and farm viability. So, for example, looking at land use planning, how do we make how do we provide equitable access to land in New Hampshire? We all know land is very expensive in New England. How do we set up systems or, pass policies or whatever the lever of change is? How do we do that in an equitable way that everyone has access, equal access to land if they want to farm or garden or have community land or space? And farm viability similarly, how do we think about dairy and viability? Many dairy farms in New Hampshire have gone out of business, but some who have maintained their businesses are transitioning into growing grain because they have the land. It's a more profitable industry. It's just a transition that's happened very seamlessly. So to consider that as a possibility of thinking about moving the dairy industry forward in New Hampshire, thinking about it in that way, that's what we asked our subject matter experts to do in terms of viability. So yeah, as you can see, all the brief topics, they run the gamut, and I could dive into any single one of them, but I'll save that for our next Carsey Policy Hour. Okay, so I'm going to run through what a brief is and what's inside of it, because I think it just helps paint the picture of again, what we were trying to achieve with this strategic plan. So each one of the briefs has a purpose statement and a what's at stake section. So that is essentially, what is at stake if we no longer had any more grocery stores or food cooperatives in our state, what would we lose? What would be at stake for our state and for our agricultural system, our food system? Then we had the current conditions section, which is very much a snapshot in time. So when this plan was written and the data that was available at the time, what is the current status of that product market issue? So what is the current status of our grocery stores and food cooperatives today? Related to that current conditions is challenges and opportunities. Sounds self-explanatory, but I do always want to point out that the opportunities that, we asked our brief authors to come up with were really supposed to be very specific and really focused on things that are like assets that we have. Like, what are things that exist already that are, a key opportunity area for this product market or issue? And the following, there's, again, as I talked about in the beginning, there's always going to be some grounding data in each brief that really kind of drives home the point of the brief and what is trying to be told by the brief authors. So you'll see those in each and every brief. Okay, the big piece of it all is the recommendations. So that comes last, and as you see here, there's 5 recommendations. Some have more, but again, we asked our brief authors to be very specific with their recommendations. It's very easy to say, well, we generally need this thing, or we generally need this program or policy to be passed, but we knew that if our strategic plan was going to be actionable and something that people could turn to when they say, okay, I need to work on this thing, this issue, what can I do? We wanted these recommendations to be clear, concise, and really actionable, and not overwhelming or something that would people wouldn't be able to take on and then their work. So that's the recommendation section. And not to be overlooked, our authors, we purposely made sure that our authors were included in our briefs, not only in print, but as we'll talk about in a little bit on our website, because the point of this plan is to not only have the information that we need about each product market or issue, but we need to know who the experts are. We need to know who to turn to if there's questions, or maybe, our food system is ever changing. These recommendations may not always be what is exactly needed. We may need to turn back to these experts that we had write this brief and say, hey, this is changing, this is different. How can we do something differently or change our path in our work to achieve what we want to in this area. And again, it just, for our hope is it continues the line of coordination, collaboration, and working together by knowing who wrote these things and who is kind of working in this space. So I want to dive into the recommendations a little bit and also give us the opportunity to talk about how the strategic plan is as our Commissioner of Agriculture affectionately says, is not going to be collecting dust on the shelf. We knew that if we didn't have the ability to make our strategic plan very accessible to people, but also give ourselves the ability to update it and also change it, that it would collect dust and it would have the more of a chance of not being as actionable as we wanted it to be. So not only does our plan exist as a document, it exists on our website on NewHampshireFoodAlliance.org as all the brief topics have their own page and their own area, but also the recommendations. We created this filtering page where and this has changed a little bit since I took this screenshot, but all the recommendations, all 143, are on our website, and you're able to sort them by all these different topics. So you can sort them by brief topics, there's some tags, there's goals, but the one I really love is the type of action. So underneath that drop down, there's all these different types, like we've organized the recommendations into type of action, how this thing could be achieved or what needs to be done for it to be achieved. So for example, you could go to this page on our website, and one of the actions is policies and policy change. And you could look at all the different policy recommendations. There's 39. I counted them this morning. There's 39 different policy recommendations made in the strategic plan specific to food and agriculture. For example, we have, this is one that's pretty pertinent right now, from the wasted food brief, there is a recommendation to expand the current food waste ban that was passed, I think, last session or the session before. But there's a recommendation to expand that policy in order to include more waste generators and ban more different types of food waste from facilities in New Hampshire in order to reduce greenhouse gases. So those are the types of things that you'll find underneath the recommendations. And again, I share this because it's important for what we're going to talk about next, which is implementation. It's important for us to be able to, in real time, show progress on what we're doing for the strategic plan, moving it forward. And this website and the ability to make the recommendations dynamic and accessible is helping us do that. Okay, so now we're going to transition. We have this strategic plan. We launched it last March. Our team and our network has been working really hard to figure out what that next step looks like for us. So we have a better understanding of our food system, what makes it viable. We have the recommended actions, and we have the network of leaders who can take action. So what do we do now? So our motto for our next step is, you already do great work. Don't work harder, plan smarter. So what does that look like? And I know this is a lot on here, but this is kind of an outline of how we are thinking about implementation. And you'll see a lot of familiar words on this slide that I've said already, but for us, we got to keep those mantras consistent. This is how we're thinking about moving the strategic plan forward. And it falls into these three buckets. And I'm going to talk about the first two buckets primarily today. The students in the strategic plan bucket is an exciting one, but truly under development. But the summary of that is that we, being a part of UNH and being within the College of Life Sciences and Agriculture, is such a uniquely exciting area to be in for the strategic plan specifically, because we can involve students and utilize staff and researchers like folks at the Carsey Institute, for example, or the Carsey for example, that can help us move the strategic plan forward. So we're thinking about ways to not only involve our food system at large in this work, but also thinking about how students and staff and faculty can play a role in it as well. So that's something that we're working with leadership at COLSA on and figuring that out. So we'll have more to report hopefully in the next year or so. But the two things we're going to focus on today are implementation work groups and partner work plans and participating partners. And those two things are separate, but they are connected to each other through something that we're going to be doing every year moving forward, which is sharing out an annual progress report of what took place each year with work on the strategic plan in order for us to understand where we need to continue to do work, where we need to do, maybe where there are gaps and opportunities in the work that we need to do, and how we have to do it. Do we need to collaborate? Do we need to coordinate better? What is the strategy going to be? So implementation work groups is a fancy word or fancy phrase for collaborating. We identified that a lot of the strategic plan recommendations are really, can be really complex and may also need multiple different types of people, groups, organizations working together to achieve them. So our best thought was bringing those people together in an implementation work group to move those complex issues forward. So the little formula we created and how to put a work group together is identifying these objectives from the strategic plan that, again, are really complex, really big, dynamic issues that, again, cannot be solved by one or two organizations alone. So what we do here at the Food Alliance is we identify some leaders in that space. We ask them to join us and be leaders for that work group. We provide them some administrative support and facilitation support, and then we bring together partners in that who are interested in that area or interested in working on these recommendations or objectives, and they meet regularly and work on specific projects or initiatives that are in service of those objectives that they identified. And we also these work group leaders are also represented on our network leadership team, which is another team of people that we bring together in order to help us think about our work and really be strategic in how we're moving forward. So that's the formula. And I'll give you an example of a work group that fits this formula in a second. So these are our current work groups that we have launched or are launching soon, CC. And our plan is to launch a couple every 6 months or so. Again, we are a small team at the Food Alliance, so we're trying to be really thoughtful about how we're launching these and making sure that they're well supported by our staff. But our housing and farmland protection work group, that was the first one that we launched. We launched it earlier this year. And basically we have our work group leads, we have American Farmland Trust, the New Hampshire BEA, and the New Hampshire Housing are the leads for that group. And it brings together over 25 different professionals and organizations that are working in the land use planning space, that are working in the conservation space in New Hampshire. And they're coming together to kind of really interrogate that intersection between housing and farmland protection, to really understand how those two things those two things don't have to be at odds with each other. They can work hand in hand to not only provide housing for all people in New Hampshire, but also for our farmers. I think something people forget is that we want to protect land and we want to conserve land, but if that land is not able to have housing for a farmer who wants to work that land, it's not really a viable situation for that farmer. That farmer needs housing, they need a place to live. So sometimes, or in the past, those two areas have kind of been at odds with each other, but we put this group together in order to overcome that and really work on that issue together. So if you're interested in learning more about the work groups, I have the QR code there. You can learn more and join one if you're interested. Okay, so the other side of the coin is our participating partners and our partner work plans. So when the implementation work groups, if that, if we're summarizing that, that's the collaborative space. The participating partners and partner work plans is our coordination space. It's having people understand what they're doing and thinking about what they're doing through the lens of the strategic plan, but also having that information be shared out and understood by not only us at the Food Alliance, but other network partners. So everyone can know what each other is doing. We don't do duplicative work, and we can get more things done together. So the kind of how this works is an organization. You'll see we have Seacoast Seat Locals partner work plan up there as an example. Seacoast Seat Local is an organization some of you might know based out of the seacoast of New Hampshire. They run farmers markets and other food access related programs in that area of the state. And they signed up as a participating partner. And what they did is we asked them to fill out this document, and they did two things. They shared about their work, what programs that they do, every year or are deciding to do for 2026, that they feel are really aligned with the strategic plan. They also shared about any recommendations specifically that they may be working on. And they submitted that to us, and now the Food Alliance knows that work or knows what they're doing. And we are able to say, hey, okay, we know Seacoast Seat Local is working on this program, and we know that there's another organization working on something similar just across the way in the Monadnock region. They should talk to each other and collaborate. Maybe they can work together. So that's kind of the overarching idea behind our participating partners and our partner work plans. And so, as I was saying, our participating partners will sign up. They'll do this every year. They will share their work and what the progress they made on their work in the year prior. And what we'll do with the New Hampshire Food Alliance, we will take that information and weave it together with the work of our implementation work groups and with the work of all the participating partners to help our broader network understand what each other's doing and help us to continue to bring that momentum forward of working through these complex issues in really effective ways together. So again, if you're interested in learning more about becoming a participating partner, you can scan that QR code and read a little bit more about it on our website, or sign up if you're interested. Okay, so it all comes together. As I was saying, those two buckets, those implementation work groups and our participating partners, those two things come together, and in our goal in late 2026, early 2027 is to produce our first annual progress report for the strategic plan, which will take the information from the work groups and from the participating partners and filter it through the brief topics that we talked about in the beginning. So we'll be taking that information and mapping it against all those 27 product markets and issues, not only to see what we achieved, but to see where the gaps are and where work needs to get done. And then we'll also be able to see, because we'll be asking our participating partners what they'll be doing for 2027, we'll be able to see what kind of work is being planned on for the next year. So it'll really be, again, a snapshot in time, but also a way for us to understand where we are and where we're going with our strategic plan work, with our food systems work. Because I like to say strategic plan work is food systems work, and food systems work is strategic plan work. So we're hoping that this progress report will keep the strategic plan top of people's mind. It'll keep it active in their work and keep them engaged in continuing the momentum that we've gained so far and really moving our food system forward towards viability. So that is what I have for strategic plan work and what we've been doing here at the Food Alliance, but I will stop sharing my screen and hopefully field some questions.
Fantastic. Thank you, Colleen. That was super interesting. And what a great example of how civil society can drive change in the state. That was a great explanation of how the Food Alliance is serving as this collaborator and convener. Very cool stuff. So thanks for your work in that space. Question about whether or not you all faced specific obstacles that you want to talk about, or any resistance throughout the state from, anyone, from policymakers, from businesses, any resistance to the work that you've been doing?
Thankfully, no. We haven't really had any resistance. I think the biggest hurdle that we've faced is just, as maybe some of your heads are spinning, hopefully not too much. It's a lot of information and it covers a really broad swath of topics that some people may not know as much about one as the other. So that is to me, that's the biggest barrier, is like getting people over that information leap. Um, and kind of getting them where they need to be too. And, I don't expect anyone to come to the strategic plan and have memorized it or plan to work on every piece of it. But to just get them to the place where they need to be and to know the information that they need or find the information that they need has been the biggest thing. So that's and I hope people can through our website and through some of the ways we've set up. But one of our biggest successes so far, and we work, you never know what you're gonna get when you're presenting to our legislature. But we did present to the House Environment Ag Committee after we launched in last March, and they were so extremely receptive to it. And just, I mean, not to toot our horn, but it was just so excited to have this information at their fingertips. They were like, we do this all day long. We're trying to pass policies that are going to help our food system. That's why we're here. And to have this kind of tome of knowledge and the people that we need to turn to if we have questions was really valuable to them. So that was a really, heartwarming moment after a lot of work.
Absolutely. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Jay Minkara had a comment here, and I wonder if you could just speak to this. It would be great if you could include regional planning commissions in the implementation work groups, is his comment. I don't know if you want to talk more about that.
Absolutely. I think, I mean, I don't know, I guess I'll pose a question, but also provide a little bit of an answer. Would love to know what if you feel like the housing and farmland protection group is not something that the regional planning commissions could be a part of. I do think that that would be a great space for regional planning commissions. If I know it's a little bit specific, I know the planning commissions work on a broader suite of issues than just housing and farmland protection, but that could be a great start. But if you had an idea about something that a regional planning commission, like a work group topic that you think would be good for them, I'd love to hear about it. But yeah, I think those organizations across our state are really impactful and provide a lot of great resources to our community. So would love to learn more about what you're hoping for with that.
Terrific. And please feel free to share some of those ideas in the chat.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah. Drew mentioned earlier in your discussion that he doesn't see lumber and forests mentioned. Why is
that's a great question. The picking those, I know 27 sounds like a lot. Picking those brief topics was extremely hard. We went through multiple series of listening sessions and meetings to try to arrive at those 27 brief topics, and we know we missed some. We are very, very, very aware. Like, for example, the other products brief, we grappled with that. We're like, maple syrup should have its own brief, but we ended up deciding to lump it together with others. And I think that forestry that's to be something that in our next iteration of the plan we would consider, because it is a part of some of our farmers are involved in that space in addition to growing food. I think my biggest response to that is that we wanted to focus first on issues that really affected our ability to grow and consume and market local food, edible things. That's kind of our number one issue here at the Food Alliance. But I don't want to discount the fact that forestry is a significant part of that, our system. But it didn't make the cut this time. I'm sorry about that.
Okay, great. Thanks. Michael Smith mentioned something in the comment, and I want to make sure in the chat, and I want to make sure that you saw it. He said, not sure if this is helpful information, but I am co-hosting the Farm to School work group with Laura Alamayu if there are any questions related to that.
Yes, thank you, Mike. Yes, I didn't use Farm to School as our example, but since Mike's here and I worked on Farm to School for a very long time and it's now transitioned to Extension. But Laura and Mike are running that Farm to School work group, and it's if that's your thing, it's a really exciting time to jump into that work group and jump into the Farm to School space. Because they're kind of Laura and Mike are re-envisioning what the Farm to School program is going to be looking like in New Hampshire, and what kind of things they're going to be focusing on moving forward and programs and all of that great stuff. So that is on our website. I can share it in the chat, but a great time to join that work group if you're interested in Farm to School.
Can you explain exactly what Farm to School
Sure.
is?
Sorry. I shouldn't assume that people know that. Farm to School is actually quite broad, and it means a lot of different things to a lot of different organizations and groups and such, but the primary thing is engaging students and young people with our agricultural and food system through a variety of different opportunities. So sometimes it's gardening at school, sometimes it's in the CAF and getting local food into the CAF and educating about that, understanding what types of opportunities for jobs are available for students who are interested in the agricultural and food system. So really providing, sometimes we call it food literacy, also food system literacy and Farm to School kind of go hand in hand, just really trying to understand or get students engaged in understanding where our food comes from and what that means for their livelihood and also their interests and their lives moving forward. So that's how I think about Farm to School. But if Mike wants to put it in the chat, his diatribe, I would love to hear it also.
Fantastic. Thank you. Patty Davis, thank you. You're probably not the only one who wants to see the QR code again. Colleen, are you able to share that QR code again?
I can do one better. I will
Okay.
I will put the link right in the chat.
Nice. Awesome. Thank you.
Yes.
Great. Okay. Question from Drew Gillette. Thank you. Any chance for state funding of farmers markets?
Oh, Drew, I so hope so. And if you talk to our Assistant Commissioner, Josh Marshall at the Department of Ag, he will say the same thing. I truly believe, and I'm a little biased because I work at my farmers market in my town, but farmers markets, I think, are really a unique market channel for our farms because they are the right scale. Our farms, again, as we talk about, are small. And a lot of farmers are not able to get their food and produce into these bigger stores like Hannaford's or Shaw's or Stop and Shop. Like their best way of getting their local food sold is through a farmer's market. So I would love to see some state funding for farmers markets. I'm not sure exactly what that would look like in terms of maybe it's a policy passing, maybe it's a program that gets developed by the department. I'm not sure, but I would love to see it.
Indeed. Thanks for the question. Lori Harding is asking about students. How many students are involved in your program? What farm-related majors does UNH have?
The second part, I'm not the best person to speak to about majors. I can definitely connect you with somebody who is. In terms of how many students are involved in our work right now, as I said in the beginning, it is developing, but we are piloting some research projects with the eco-gastronomy program at UNH. So the students in that capstone class, I think there's about 10 of them. They have each taken on a research project based off the recommendations or issues outlined in the strategic plan. And they're working on them this semester, and they're going to be presenting them at our statewide gathering, which happens in April, which is really exciting. So we're excited about that kind of as like our foray into working with students and what that looks like, not only for us, but for them. One of the projects that one of the students is working on is pretty neat. His project is doing an assessment of all the infrastructure that is food system infrastructure that exists in New Hampshire. So processing abilities and cold storage and distribution. And he's taking an assessment of that and then going to kind of map it out. And so we can have a better understanding of what we have in terms of food system infrastructure, and then of course what we need for the future. So that will be really exciting to see his work.
Awesome. Great. Question from Meredith. Hi, Meredith, a former student. How did you get buy-in from all the partners?
That's a great question. We are very fortunate that over the past 10 years, and it's not all my work, I've joined a team of people been working on this, working at the Food Alliance and working on developing our network for over 10 years. But we always at our core have been about, I feel like I've said this 100 times, but coordinating, collaborating, and really being thoughtful when we see work happening in the food system, about not trying to kind of take it on in a way that's not sustainable. Our goal is always to like look at a problem or look at an issue and really think about who needs to be involved and just be really thoughtful about working on that thing. So I think the development of that network over those years was allowed us to now take on this strategic planning process. People trusted us at the Food Alliance to know that we weren't just gonna lead them down some crazy rabbit hole of strategic planning, that we were gonna lean on our principles as an organization, as a network, to prioritize people's thoughts and opinions about how it should be done and what they felt was important. And so I think that building those trusting working relationships with these organizations across the state was key in that. But also beyond that, we were so careful and thoughtful about being clear about what our intention was with the strategic plan. Like, I say, it sounds like all of it happened very quickly, but it was months and years of just thinking about how we wanted to get to that endpoint and just really being thoughtful about it and not just throwing spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks, like really engaging our community and knowing what people think they needed through this strategic planning process to feel like it was going to be something useful to them. So I think that was our secret sauce a little bit.
That's great. A question from someone at NRHS. NRHS is a high school in the Lakes region. Is there a way for high school students to get involved and learn more? And then there's a comment after that, maybe Mike, as we already work with him. Mike, you keep coming up in this discussion.
Yes, I think Mike is a great resource. Mike, just for others who don't know Mike, he's very busy. He is the lead on New Hampshire Agriculture in the Classroom, which is kind of and I don't want to over speak to Mike's work, but it's kind of a farm to school, I want to say adjacent, but very parallel to the farm to school work that's being done in the state. But I know it goes well beyond that, and I definitely suggest connecting with Mike if you are interested in getting high school students involved. I don't have a clear path for high school students to be involved. I think a lot of what we've done at the university level is just really thoughtfully sharing about the strategic plan work in ways that make people feel like it's a part of their life. I like to, whenever I make a presentation to students at UNH about the strategic plan, I always use the wasted food brief as kind of an example, because it's something that we all do. It affects all of our lives. There's always that, package of spinach in the back of your fridge that you forgot about, that you're like, oh my God, it's going to go to waste. And it's something that, is very relatable. So being able to break down the strategic plan into opportunities for everyone to engage with it, there are ways to do that. And if folks have questions about how to do that, I'm happy to brainstorm with them. But I think that's the best way, especially for students or younger folks who are passionate about this work, but may look at a strategic plan like this as something like a little bit overwhelming, or maybe a little bit academic at certain points. Making it breaking it down in a way that is that you can connect it to your own individual life or things that you see every day is a great place to start.
Question from Maddie. Hi, Maddie. I saw agritourism on an earlier slide. Just curious if agrivoltaics came up at all.
It did
And if you
not.
can explain what that is.
Yes, woof. I'm getting tested. Um, so agrivoltaics, I think it's not in the agritourism brief. That agritourism brief was very specific, like specifically honed on using agriculture as a way to open up another area of, or agritourism and agriculture as a way to open up another area of business, another line of business for farmers. So not just about buying and selling food, but coming to the farm as an experience and being able to make money off of that as another income source. Agrivoltaics, which, and there's probably someone on here who's smarter than me and probably could explain it better, but that is more um, kind of, it is another opportunity for farmers to bring in income. It would be installing solar panels on some of their land, and having animals or sometimes even growing food in between those areas of where those solar panels are set up. So they're able to offset some of their um, utilities costs with panels, but also still continue to use the land in a way that helps them produce food. So it's kind of like a 2-for-1 deal. I don't know if there's a lot of it happening in New Hampshire because we don't have a ton of very flat land and we don't have a ton of farmers, as I said in the beginning, don't have a great amount of big tracts of land, which I know I could be wrong, but I know that's like kind of the standard for a really successful agrivoltaics program, is to have that space and the ability to do it. But I could be wrong. It's not something I'm 100% knowledgeable about. But it's a good question.
Great, thanks. You mentioned the annual progress report that you all are going to work on. Can you talk a little bit more about the metrics that are going to be used to track meaningful change and how you're looking at, progress?
Yeah, I think metrics is a tough one for us because a lot of the data that we're going to get to inform this progress report is going to be very qualitative. It's not going to be, or at least that's our expectation, is it's going to be a lot of, organizations saying we did this program and we did these things and we helped, pass this policy. It's not going to necessarily be hard numbers and data. A lot of the data you see in the strategic plan currently is, it's not data that we went out and solicited in a way. It's data from the USDA, from other sources like the New England Food System Planners Partnership did a huge report, this is a tangent, but it is relevant. They did a huge report about the New England food system and looked at each individual state food system and how much local food they're producing. So there's a lot of data from that we use. So when those data sets get updated, we will update our strategic plan and the progress report accordingly with data that is relevant and be able to speak to some of the changes that are happening. But I think a lot of the progress report, again, will be more of a story told about what happened this year. And again, like I think the biggest thing for us is two things: understanding what others are doing so we can collaborate and not duplicate, and also see where the gaps are. Maybe a ton of people worked on food access and wasted food over the last year, but no one was really working on climate resilience and disaster relief. So we know that maybe that's something that we need to shift focus on because shockingly, all 27 briefs are important. So we want to make sure that our work covers an even amount of things in the strategic plan.
Yeah, and so 27 different briefs, everything's important. If everything's important, how do you prioritize? And can you talk a little bit about, what the alliance partners see as, top priorities? These things should be done in the next several years, and then intermediate, and then longer term plans.
Yeah, I think it's a question we get a lot, and it's something we've really struggled with. I won't lie, because this plan is, one part of the whole. It's not intended to be a prescription for anyone's work. It's just, it's there as a map, as a guide. Um, it felt disingenuous to us to say, okay, now that we have all this information, we feel these three things are the most important because that may not be the same for everybody. So it's been really a challenge to try and prioritize because, like you're saying, if everything's important, then how do you move anything forward? I think it's just what we're hoping to get out of this progress report is is kind of an exercise in prioritization. It's like people are doing this work already. Like I said, food systems work is strategic plan work and vice versa. So if we see if we do this progress report and we see where the interest is and where people are just naturally prioritizing their work, it gives us at the Food Alliance a better understanding of, okay, that, you didn't have to come out and say it and plant your flag in the ground, but you're with your work and with the attention you have behind your work, you are prioritizing these things, and that kind of just naturally gives us our path forward. I know that that sounds fluffy in a world of strategic planning, which is, not fluffy, but for us, that is the best way we've so far figured out how to do this work that is also really in line with our core values as an organization. So it's a really political answer, but that's the best way we've figured it out so far.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, if you could choose a couple of things that stand out to you in the strategic plan that you think are perhaps more doable in the short term, what would those be?
Um, More doable. I think I guess there's a couple to me there are a few kind of soft balls, I guess you could say. I think that because there's been work done on these areas so far and it's just obviously it's easier to continue work that's already happening rather than start from scratch. But the local food access work that's happening across our state is absolutely phenomenal. Um, People from the food bank, from New Hampshire Hunger Solutions, from all the different smaller regional food access organizations that are working across the state are really innovating and are being really thoughtful about their work. And there's a lot of infrastructure in that space to support ensuring that everyone has access to food and local food. For example, the Grant State Market Match program is a great program. I don't know if some of you have heard of it, but basically what it does, it provides access for SNAP users to go to farmers markets and buy local food with their SNAP dollars. It's an amazing program. It's something that's existed for quite a long time, and it would be an easy win for the strategic plan and for our state to expand that program or get more farmers markets signed up or get more people participating in it. So like something like that to me is not, a snap of the fingers, but it's something that exists and it's something people are passionate about. And being able to grow that program would really be helpful. I think also the wasted food arena, I think is really primed for some easy successes. As I said, there's already a food waste ban that exists in New Hampshire, so continuing to expand that and educate about wasted food and food waste to people and how to compost and the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services. Shout out to Paige, if anyone knows Paige Wilson. She's the best, and she is so passionate about ensuring that we deal with our waste in a mindful way here in the state. And it may sound not important, but the waste stream, there are so many opportunities to diversify in a way where you could feed people with this excess food that's being thrown away, or you could feed animals, or you can create compost and soil health on a farm. It kind of touches every aspect. And again, I think it's really primed right now in our state to have some wins. So I'm hoping those two areas we can kind of move forward on.
Awesome. That's a great positive note to end on. Thank you so much, Colleen, for joining us and giving us
Yes,
all
thank
this
you.
information. And thank you all who joined us and asked questions and gave us some information, Mike. Join us next month. Next month is International Women's Day on March 8th. So we are going to be joined by Devin Quinn from the New Hampshire Women's Foundation to talk about women's issues in New Hampshire. So it should be a good discussion. Join us in March. And happy Wednesday to you all. Have a great day. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, everyone.